When it comes to achieving goals in a set period of time, planning becomes essential. When you're trying to run a startup all by yourself, from scratch, planning becomes the only thing that keeps you from losing your mind. At early stages, every entrepreneur thinks they don't need to plan or systematically organize material for their startup. This seems like an extra step, time consuming. The defeating thought is, I'm working alone anyway. I have everything stored in my head. Until you take your project to the real world. When people pose questions you have an answer to, but cannot phrase. When you get irritated when others don't align with your vision. When everything's clear in your mind. That's when, for the first time, you realize documentation and planning play a major role. I was the same. Never believed in heavy documentation for Notio. Always thought I knew what had to be done, and I want no barriers early on. While I'll say it was beneficial for me to start quick, over time I started getting lost under the scope of my own project. When I associated people to the project, whether it be validation or pilot testing, I realized that there was no medium for me to explain the exact scope to them. I could verbally explain everything, miss out on a few points, then catch up later. Unclear, messy, and unorganized. Over time, I got into graphically creating designs to better explain the intricacies of the platform, where the courses tab would go, how the notes upload dialog box would look, how your own notes could be converted into illustrative courses on a single platform, and how the architecture would work. All of this. This led me to documentation all in all. What I was creating was HLDs and LLDs. Then came the need to pitch Notio at eSummit. I then needed a pitch deck, another form of documentation. What's even more detailed than a pitch deck? A product requirement document, or a scope of project doc. You can see how there are so many things tied to the idea in your mind once you start making it reality. That's why you need to document and plan your next steps for your startup or any venture for that matter, even when you're working alone. I would say especially when you're working alone. Now I still didn't have a structure to how I was approaching work, adding features, release timelines, marketing timelines. I had nothing planned. I kept adding features the pilot users suggested, like the doc sidebar AI, which automatically scans your document and helps you with the details, whether it be summarizing, getting main points, solving assignments, or whatever. This is what the users asked for, and I kept adding it, as Notio is a platform built for its users, students. But still, I couldn't directly say when I could launch or when I would drop the next feature update. That's when I took a step back and turned to project planning. Now, I used a rather simple and popular technique for project management. This comes from the agile methodologies. What I did was listed down all the features that fell under the important and doable categories together for the first version of the product. This came from pilot testing, validation, and talking to target users. Once I had a complete list, I tagged them based on their priorities, from 1 being the highest to 3 being the lowest priority. I then assigned each feature these units known as story points. A single story point would represent a set period of time I thought was feasible enough to complete one basic task set. Based on relativity, I ranked each feature with an approximate number of story points based on their complexity. This gives me a better outlook as to how much time is expected in completion of these particular features and task sets. This helps me plan with surety my further steps like marketing, feature rollouts, and release promises. By documenting everything down on paper, sorting into priorities, and approaching work set by set. I am able to boost my workflow to a great extent. I can now exactly predict when my next drop will be, what features I can cover in what amount of time, and what features are the most important to build and ship the earliest. So, if you're working solo, integrating proper planning and documentation into your workflow is of utmost importance. This will bring clarity and add to your discipline. You can try the same method that I'm using, or you can come up with something that suits you. And when you do, let me know how it works for you. On a side note though, an early version for Notio is already live. So you can head on to notio.co.in and check it out today, absolutely for free. It's in its early stage pilot testing. You can join as a public tester right away. You can send me your feedback and features you would like to see on office@notio.co.in. My aim is to build India's best student OS and change the way students learn with AI. That being all, I'll see you in the next one. Until, keep growing. Cheers.